Hey Summoners, make sure that you've subscribed to the Mobalytics YouTube channel and hit that bell button, that way you're always up to date and part of our notification squad. Hey Summoners, it's your challenger coach Moriarty here with our newest Mobalytics tier list for 9.10. Let's get started. If you're wondering where Yuumi is on our list, we have a rule that we don't place new champions on it initially. We do, however, have a Yuumi guide for you by a very special guest coming out very soon, so be sure to watch it when it comes out. Starting off, we have patch note changes for all roles. Essence Reaver is receiving a classic Riot 5 AD buff, which is a minor buff to champions such as Sivir or Xayah, as well as champions who have picked it up in the past such as Jhin, who may even consider dropping one of his 3 IEs for it now. Rageblade is receiving quite a large buff, with the Phantom hit going from 2 to 3. With some quick math, you can see that before, if you autoed 10 times, with the passive up you would get 5 Phantom hits, but now it'll actually only be 3. The loss of 2 Phantom hits might not seem like much, but every auto counts when you need about 100 to kill a Nunu or Rammus at the moment. As for making the mix pen no longer scale off levels, it's actually not much of a compensation, as before you would complete Rageblade post level 9, making it so you had at least 11% mix pen, so in most cases it's only a 4% buff. Conqueror received a minor nerf by 2%, despite everyone hoping for some kind of mini rework where the healing and true damage were removed, and the stacking AD portion was retained, as adding 3 of the most beneficial stats a bruiser could want in one keystone might be hard to balance, but oh well. We'll need to wait for Season 12 when Riot releases Runes Reforged and Remastered. Moving out of the top lane patch notes, we have changes to Fiora W allowing her to block Kennen stuns, but to be honest, that won't really help her in that matchup anyways. We also have changes to Tryndamere ECD going down by 1 second, with a corresponding nerf to his AP ratio, because in the past, every single time they lowered his ECD, Tryndamere would actually build AP and put on his wizard hat, so they took action against this ahead of time. We also have the long-awaited nerf to Riven, and it's fairly harsh. One of Riven's biggest points of frustration is how safe and hard to kill she was, for a champion who does so much damage. Now all these times where her shield came up just at the right time during a duel won't happen as often, making her a much riskier pick, which is why we moved her down to B tier after her ECD was nerfed by 4 seconds, even with the corresponding buff to her Q. Now for the actual top lane tier list. We have Nasus, Urgot, Garen, and Yorick remaining in S tier, while Jax has moved down to A tier. This is due partially because of the Conqueror nerfs, but mostly because of some of his harder matchups are becoming more popular, such as Renekton. For A tier changes, we have Nico moving down to B tier due to her on-hit Rageblade build being nerfed, but she does have an AP build that is seeing some success, so if it continues to trend upwards, we'll see her back in A tier. Singed, on the other hand, was moved up to A tier after his buffs were combined with a newer build where you go Conqueror with full tanky AP with Rylai's Liandry's. Singed main somehow found a way to make him even more annoying. One of the most talked about champions right now is Aatrox, and after his hotfix, he definitely deserves to be in our A tier, up from B. His ability to turn around skirmishes and dominate lane is incredible thanks to his new ultimate reset mechanic and crazy amount of healing from his passive. He's a lot more fun to play compared to his other iterations, so I recommend if you're looking to pick up a champion who is on the more difficult side to try him out, as it takes a couple of games to get used to his spacing on his Q. I would consider using the practice tool to figure it out so that you spare yourself and your teammates some LP though. Overall, I would consider his rework a success to the point where whoever was the lead champion designer on this one should take a crack at the inevitable Rise rework next year. For the High-ELO tier list, you'll notice a lot of changes. This is because after taking in some feedback from our other challenger players, as well as our comment section on our past videos, we decided to focus this list not on how to reach challenger, but more so on what works at the top of challenger, as well as some influence on what's strong in competitive play. This was done so that our High-ELO list more accurately describes what the strongest solo queue champions actually are, if you have the ability to perfectly execute them. This is why you'll notice in S tier top lane, we have Sylas, Aurelia, Akali, and Jace, as well as returning member Jack. Just like in the normal tier list, you'll notice that Riven has fallen out of S, but only to A tier, as more skilled Rivens can more easily find ways around her nerfs, and Aatrox moving to A tier due to the same reasons mentioned on the normal list. If you've been watching MSI, you'll notice that almost all of these S tier champions have a 100% pick ban rate, and especially high priority on Sylas. This champion began his revolution against the oppressive Riot nerfs once his skill order was changed to max Q, then E, allowing him to both have lane priority and amazing mobility / CC. He also happens to fit solo queue perfectly, with his ability to play for roams with unmatched wave clear in the top lane, outplay / solo kill potential on top of scaling very hard with his short rank 16 ultimate. His versatility and consistency due to not being weak at any stage of the game are what make him a strong S tier pick. Akali was also moved into S tier. Just like with Sylas in top lane, she has no real weak stages of the game. Though her pre-6 isn't as strong, it's just too safe versus melee champions that are more common in top lane. Once she hits 6 though, her kill pressure is one of the highest even among assassins, but unlike most other assassins, she scales well in both teamfights and split push. When combined with high outplay potential, she's very problematic in solo queue as she defines who wins by herself because of her fast snowball potential when played perfectly, or her fast reverse snowball potential when played poorly, as she offers nothing from behind. Switching over to the jungle patch notes, we have a lot of changes. For buffs, we have Xin Zhao, who got a CD reduction to his Q, allowing him to perform better if he's able to stick on his targets, as well as Graves, who got a Q damage increase at later ranks, but both buffs aren't particularly impactful. We have a cost reduction to runic echoes, making it slightly easier to hit your early power spikes on champions like Elise, Karthus, Eve, and Nidalee, to name a few. Sheikah got a quality of life change that lets him control his ult easier, and so did Hunter's Talisman, making the burn work on pets, such as Elise Spiderlings, which isn't as big of a deal as you might think, as it doesn't impact single target camps, nor does it have a big impact on AoE camps because her W is going to proc the burn initially anyways. Finally, Master Yi got a bunch of changes. More move speed on his ult, isolation damage on his Q, where you get extra damage for how many of your alpha strikes hit the same target, and cast times removed on Q and W in exchange for losing the AD on his E. This is a strong buff to his early game, as the champion doesn't build AD early, so he didn't get a lot of bonus AD from his E anyways, and the extra damage from the isolated Q will help his single target DPS, as if he needed that anyways. We also think that these changes are enough of a buff to counteract the nerfs to Rageblade, keeping him in S tier. For the jungle tier list itself, in S tier we have Vi, Rammus, Amumu, Volibear, Jax, Nunu and Willem, and Master Yi. As you've noticed, not a lot of things have changed this time around, as things have stabilized a lot after the scuttle changes kicked in. The only noteworthy change is Elise moving from B to A tier due to being one of the only aggro junglers who benefited from the scuttle spawn timer being delayed, as it allowed her to contest scuttles to level 3, making her both able to duel better during those skirmishes, and also kill the scuttle faster thanks to having Cocoon up to reduce the scuttle armor and MR. She did also get minor buffs to her itemization and runic echoes and Hunter's Talisman burn, helping her clear and spike slightly faster, which is why you see her crawling her way up on our tier list, and is my recommendation if you're looking to grab a new AP jungler that will also do well in high-elo. At this point in time, you might be thinking to yourself, how could they forget about jungle Aatrox? It's so good, it's cleared so healthy and quick. And you said you'd keep an eye on it during your update video on patch 9.9. Well, I did keep my promise, and I kept my eye very closely focused on its terrible win rate at both Plat Plus and all ranks. This champion from the jungle can snowball hard, which is why you see it pop off in high-elo sometimes. But in average elo, it just doesn't perform due to how poorly he does to step behind even slightly, kinda like low elo Lee Sin. Sometimes it pops off, and then it loses. For high-elo jungle, in S tier we have Nunu, with new additions Kha'Zix Rengar from A tier. Kha'Zix moved up due to the game pace favoring his more farm-oriented, opportunistic gank style, while Rengar got moved up for pretty similar reasons. Rengar is allowed to clear his jungle more freely, due to less aggressive junglers being popular, such as tanks who he can freely farm to 6 against, and uses empowered W to break their CC, or being a counter to some of the more popular squishy AP junglers that increase in popularity, such as Karthus or Evelynn. Rengar also benefits from picking more mobile style carries, such as Jinx or Orianna, who he has a really easy time one-shotting. In A tier, we have Kindred who moved down from S tier, as we felt she didn't match up as well compared to the other S tier champions, but is more of an A+ pick. Rek'Sai was also moved down to A tier, but more so because of her direct nerfs and the incoming Conqueror nerfs, as well as Kayn coming from B tier due to the assassin form popping out more consistently since the buffs it received a couple patches ago. Transitioning to the mid lane patch notes, we have only Brand getting a damage increase to his E. This of course impacts support as well, it's just that the higher AP ratio helps mid Brand slightly more. At mid lane S tier this patch, we have Lux, Malzahar, Vel'Koz, Morgana, Ahri, and my pick of the patch, Neeko. Neeko mid lane has become more and more popular in solo queue thanks to the Glacial Augment Hextech GLP Twin Shadows combo, which seemingly can make any champion who uses it broken at the moment. Neeko in particular uses this combo well due to her passive allowing her to really catch people off guard on who and when this powerful Glacial Augment slow will come out for an easy follow-up on her EQ burst combo. One of my favorite mind games with her, that I've used even in Challenger ELO with pretty good success, is to run TP on her, followed by TP flanking the enemy team in a brush, disguising as your own top laner so they think it's the top laner who TP'd in. Then, when you flank them, they'll try and turn on you thinking you're the top laner, and you'll get an easy multi-man ultimate from this. So try this trick out for yourself, and if you find any other cool mind games, let me know in the comment section below so I can steal them for myself. As for the rest of the tier list, it's a small patch with few changes to mid lane, therefore my recommendation for champions to pick up would be Veigar in A tier. His popularity and win rate have increased ever since the Scuttle changes started to favor more late game scaling mid laners. When playing as Veigar, focus more on lane control and harassing your opponent with Q rather than passive farming minions with it if possible. You want to make sure you do anything you can to make your early game go smoothly, because you will naturally get a lot of passive stacks during team fights and outscale almost any other mid laner anyways, so don't worry too much about getting stacks early game. Matchup wise, if you have trouble versus champions with a lot of dashes, such as Yasuo, he happens to be a very good counter to them, as they cannot dash through his E, making it so that they really can't teamfight versus him. The only option Yasuo would have would be taking Cleanse or buying QSS, which just like wards, don't do damage, so Yasuo players won't buy it, giving you a lot of free teamfight wins. For the high-elo tier list, in S tier we have Ahri, Taliyah, Talon, Sylas, and Akali. Just like in the top lane high-elo tier list, the priority on Sylas and Akali is insane, with also more late game oriented champions such as Ryze and Cassio making it into A tier. Another newcomer to A tier would be mid-beast pick of the patch being Aatrox. Mid-beast says that champion is really underrated in mid lane right now, especially after the hop fixes they gave on last patch. His ideal setup for Aatrox after the Conqueror nerfs in 9.10 is an electrocute setup as shown. This allows him to have strong level 2 and level 3 trades, which can lead into early solo kills and massive lane advantages. For his build path early game, you want to go for Black Cleaver into Death's Dance, trying to get 30% CDR where your Q is almost never on cooldown. This allows you to shove in traditional mages right now, allowing you to roam freely or simply take jungle camps, leading to massive XP and CS leads. For our last mid lane pick of the patch, we have another challenger expert of ours, Pekinwolf, with Zoe. He says that Zoe has flown under the radar since the nerfs a few patches ago, but is still very strong. Similar to a lot of other strong picks, she has good wave clear, strong pick potential, and very good scaling. When playing her, your main goal is to mainly find her on objectives with your team, getting good sleepy trouble bubbles from Fog to chunk out the enemies before the fight even happens. He recommends to take Electrocute, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, and Manifold Band plus Transcendence. At bot lane, we had direct changes for Caitlyn and Vayne. Caitlyn got an extra 20 damage when she lands a trap, which is quite a nice damage buff for her, especially early game. With the buff to her early game, and some of the Rageblade 2-item late game marksmen such as Kai'Sa, Varus, Kog'Maw, and Vayne taking a large nerf, Caitlyn's priority should increase as she will be able to more easily transition her lane leads into larger mid-game advantages without getting out DPS'd easily by these champions. Then we have Vayne, who lost 20% on her QCR during her ultimate early game, which will hurt her more than you think. And now, you get punished for maxing W first, and may not always auto-win duels by spamming your Q for stealth and damage while pretending you outplayed someone with a point-and-click champion with no skill shots. Along with the nerfs to Rageblade that were pretty openly directed at her, we decided to drop her down to A tier and not any further, as she was pretty good before the changes with a favorable meta around her, as someone needs to be able to kill tanks and bruisers right now. Therefore, in the AD carry position for S tier, we have Jinx, Draven, Sivir, and Ashe. The other changes as mentioned was Vayne moving down to A tier, Caitlyn moving up from B tier to A tier, and Kai'Sa moving down to B tier due to all her builds relying on Rageblade, and lastly Jhin making it to A tier as he was pick of the patch. He says that Jhin has a new build that's been rising in popularity, and it's Triple Infinity Edge. By amassing attack damage and crit chance, Jhin gets early access to an incredible amount of damage and snowball potential. With the new Essence Reaver buffs, he prefers 2 Infinity Edges plus Essence Reaver for slightly less AD, but much more utility from the extra CDR and mana. In the High-ELO ADC tier list for S tier we have Draven, Jinx, and Ezreal. As previously mentioned, both Vayne and Kai'Sa have dropped down in ranking due to primarily the Rageblade nerfs moving them from S to A. We also have Tristana moving to A tier due to her synergy with some of the stronger supports such as Taric or Nami, as well as Kog'Maw moving down to B tier as collateral damage to the Rageblade nerfs. As for Ezreal to S tier, this was due not only due to his safety and outplay potential when piloted by experts, but also that some of the bigger counterpicks such as Vayne or Kai'Sa, who simply outscaled him, took a big hit when Rageblade was nerfed. This allows Ezreal to more easily abuse his 2-item power spike because Rageblade users, will no longer be able to match his power at this point, allowing him to really take over games in the mid game. Lastly, as always, we have support. Soraka received yet another change, but this time being a direct buff to the movement speed on her Q, as well as it decaying less quickly. This makes Soraka even more difficult to kill and catch during both the laning phase and in skirmishes. Though this is a nice buff, it isn't really enough to put her over the edge to S tier, so she will remain in A tier. For Zyra, she received a change that made it so ADC mains will thankfully see MF support a little less often, as their plants will no longer be one-shot by on-hit abilities like Love Tap. This is a nice quality of life change for her, but nowhere near enough to take her to a new tier, just like the Soraka changes. That means that her S tier will remain untouched, with Sona, Nami, Taric, Morgana, and Nautilus, whose Will's pick of the patch, being S tier. He says that Nautilus has been a high priority pick ever since he received his buff a few patches back. If you haven't tried Nautilus yet, he highly advises you to try him out for any new and upcoming supports. Nautilus is great in his squishy supports or champions who like to poke, as they usually overextend when trying to poke you down. If you come across Yuumi anytime soon while playing Nautilus, don't bother trying to lock her down, as she can easily escape by anchoring to the ADC. Focus the ADC down first. Almost no changes happen to the High-ELO list, just like the normal support list, as support is very stable in the meta right now. One of the two changes was adding Nautilus to S tier, as right now his playmaking potential can even match Thresh, while being much tankier and having better engage. He also happens to just be better Blitzcrank at the moment, as the robot himself seems to be struggling in all brackets compared to Nautilus. If you're playing bot lane and your support is Blitzcrank and the enemy AD carry has Nautilus as his support and you lose lane, you can honestly just call support difference in all chat and be right based purely off the champion choice. Hence, the second and last change to the tier list for 9.10 was Blitzcrank from A to B tier. Thanks again for watching our tier list video for 9.10. Feel free to ask us any questions in the comments below for us to answer in the next Q&A. And as always, be sure to check out Mobalytics.gg.